Fuck, kill, spread death and destruction as they destroy. And we still do as we are told. Well, they make laws and pass bills, brainwashed by everything.
I studied AI for a number of years, and I was also involved in the graduate student union, did some organizing with them. We went on strike 2 times, and reporting for KPFK. So, you know, I went to the WGA, the Writers Guild picket lines when they were on strike about 2 years ago, and they were some of the first to raise AI as an immediate question for you know, for the future of their work. And actually, recently talking to one of them, a lot of them are unemployed now, 2 years on from the strike, because they've just laid off a bunch of these workers and outsourcing it. This is something that comes up again and again at different strikes of a bunch of different kinds of workers. Talking to Amazon delivery drivers, they have surveillance in their workplace. And so this is a concern that is for, you know, it's not some distant issue, but affecting workers right now. So I think politically we have to connect the issue of AI with, as Steve does, the issue of techno-fascism, as he says, people like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, who want to use these technologies to really lay off large sections of the workforce and concentrate power in their own hands. Also, we're seeing a genocide being committed right now that is we're seeing the first application of these technologies to automate the process of genocide. So you have these drones that fly over Gaza and shoot straight down into the heads of people using different kinds of computer vision recognition and things like that. There's also different software that was used. One of them was called Where's Daddy to track down when people are going back to their houses in order to maximize the casualties. This pager attack, apparently there was a use of language models in order to, you had speech to text, and then you use language models to go through the text and figure out, where is this leader going to be when. So it was such a large amount of text that they actually needed AI to help them with this process. So it's, we're seeing right now the first implementation of these technologies for mass extermination of human beings, basically. You have companies now like Andreessen in the US, which wants to systematically develop AI as a weapon of war. One thing that I think should be said about AI from a Marxist perspective is that actually it will be very destabilizing for capitalism. I think that if you listen to people like Sam Altman and Elon Musk, they say that AI is going to create tremendous amounts of wealth, and whoever develops it will just capture all of the wealth that will be produced from then on. And what that kind of perspective misses is that actually under capitalism, production is not just done for its own sake. You have to, if you can't, you can produce a huge mass of goods, but if you can't realize a profit from those goods, then those goods aren't of any value on the capitalist market. So actually, there are not just technical prerequisites for production, but there's also social prerequisites. And so AI might be able to produce a huge mass of wealth, but that doesn't mean that it can actually exchange those goods on the market. So paradoxically, AI, the more it develops and the more human labor is pushed out, the more it actually undermines the social basis of capitalism. And so I think that we are going to see major crises of unemployment and lowering profitability. And so that is going to cause a major mass movement in this country, I think, and around the world. And really, I think right now we're seeing long-term stagnation economically, but there's a lot of investment, hundreds of billions of dollars in these AI technologies because they think, well, this will solve our difficulties. This will end the stagnation and restore profitability. But actually, it may do that for a while for a section of capital, for some of these tech monopolies, but essentially only by diverting profit away from the rest of the capitalist economy. And so in doing that, they may raise their own profit rates temporarily, but they will also, that will come at the price of lowering the average rate of profit across the whole capitalist system and basically deepening the crisis of stagnation that's ongoing right now. And it's going to cause a major crisis, and I think there will be potential to mobilize millions of people, build a fighting rank and file movement in the unions, and oppose these things. So I think right now, we're at the very first stages of this, where it hasn't yet penetrated deeply enough into economic life that it has really mobilized masses of people. But we have to connect it to the other issues that are right in front of us: privatization of social services and education and the like, and this hostile takeover of our political system by these tech billionaires. And one other thing, I guess, is that I think that, unfortunately, on the left, I think there's a tendency not to take AI very seriously, which I think is partially because of a justified suspicion in anything that the Silicon Valley people are saying, and partially also probably because of a kind of prejudice against digital computers and what they're capable of. You look at a digital computer and you think it's just sort of this fixed lattice of transistors, and how could it reproduce the kind of dynamic behavior that you see in a human? But I think that's wrong, and I think that the Stop AI people are right to be worried about the dangers posed by AI. But I wanted to read a quote from Ernest Mandel, who was a Marxist economist, Trotskyist, writing in 1985, 40 years ago, during an earlier wave of automation. And at that point in time, the full automation of the economy seemed like a prospect for the distant future. But he did talk about the possibility, and he said, if necessary, humanity can decide to limit or to stop the development of that power, or even to stop the production of roboticized computers and computerized robots altogether. They are human tools subordinated to specific human purposes. Humanity can avoid begetting sorcerers' apprentices if it gains full control over its own tools and products. So in other words, it's a social problem because it's not just a technical problem. It's a question of right now under the capitalist system, production is anarchic, and humans are subjected to the logic of the market rather than us being able to subordinate our own tools and products to our own ends. So he says, if humanity becomes master of its society, of the social organization of labor, then there is no danger of it becoming enslaved by thinking computers. But that presupposes abolition of private property, market economy, etc. And he concludes, against these dangers, we must mobilize not under the slogan of down with science and its dangerous potential, or destroy the computer, but under the slogan, let humanity become master of its social and technical fate, master of its economy and of all the products of its manual and intellectual labor. So in other words, it's what's necessary is social revolution, because otherwise humanity is subjected to the blind forces and logic of capital. So I think that should still be our slogan today.
I only have a few minutes because Stop AI, as you might know, does some direct action things, and there's a lot of direct action to do. But I just want to ask a question. Could we see a show of hands? Who thinks that AI is a threat to the existence of the working class? Okay, all right, so we're all pretty much on the same page. Who thinks that AI could be a threat to the existence of humanity itself? Sure, yeah, there's a lot of support for that view. And in fact, it's more and more a mainstream view. Bernie Sanders, you might have noticed, was just interviewed by Gizmodo the other day. And he said he spoke with some of the heads of the AI companies. And they're concerned about losing control of the technology they're developing. They expect that they will have systems more capable than humans in the near future, in as soon as 0 to 5 years. And they don't have a plan for how they're going to maintain control of those systems. So this could happen before mass job loss. This is a real threat. It should be taken seriously. And that's part of what Stop AI is doing.
You're saying this could happen before?
Yes, before mass job loss. We could have systems which we can't control. Right.
You're talking about AGI?
Yes. AI systems, exactly. And I'm sorry, what was your name? Peter. Like Peter mentioned, this is at its center a political struggle. This is a struggle over the destiny of the human race, of the working class. And that's what we have to make this a fight. Right now, we're all just sitting waiting for this wave to crash over us. And what Stop AI is doing is taking it on the offensive. We have to take the time now to begin mobilizing society. We can't wait. Crises don't produce mass movements. People produce mass movements. Crises might produce the environment in which a movement can succeed, but we have to begin right now, reaching out, organizing, and mobilizing all the people whose fates this affects. And that's all of us. So, like I said, I've got 2 kids, and I'm doing this because of their future. I'm not going to sit by and watch their world be taken away from them. And I hope that all of you will respond to this threat in the same way. We have to go on the offensive. We have to, if necessary, change the political system. If that's what it takes to ensure the safety of humanity, the security of the people we love, that's what we have to do. And we just have to buckle it down and do it, regardless of how hard or how daunting it seems. Because the alternative is we're going to be wiped out by this. People say like AI is a tool. It's like AI is a tool in the sense that the Death Star was a tool, right? That this is what we're looking at, and this is how we have to respond to it. So we do direct action to try and mobilize people, gain attention, and essentially the fundamental fight is even before it's political, it's spiritual, it's personal. It's a question inside every one of you. What are you going to do when you're faced with a threat to the people you love? Are you going to cower in fear, or are you going to reach and light that flame of courage and begin lighting it in other people? Because if we can't do that, we're screwed. You may as well hang it up now. So that's the question for everyone here. I just came to San Francisco a few months ago, October. I left my family in Miami because I am concerned that my children are not going to have a future. They're not going to grow up to have a future that I had. They might not grow up at all. A few days after I hit the ground here in San Francisco, I was arrested with my friend Sam Kirchner for locking the doors shut of the AI companies developing the technology they say threatens the life of every person on Earth. And what I'm saying is this is unacceptable. And it's more than, you can't just say it's unacceptable. If it's unacceptable, you can't accept it. You have to do whatever it takes to stop it. And that's what I invite you to do. Check out stopai.info. We're having a presentation on the 24th. We'll pass around some flyers that's got all the info. And a demo on the 25th to begin to make this resistance public and visible.
It would be nice to say that our unions are fighting this. One of the things that the AFT just decided, Randy Weingarten, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Randy Weingarten signed an agreement with OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google to train 100,000 teachers on how to bring AI into the classroom. That is not fighting AI, that is collaborating with AI. And like all the people have been saying, even though AI is posed as your assistant, folks, you are training your replacement. It is not our assistant, it is our replacement. It's just being trained. If it only knows 10% of your job, it's your assistant. But when it learns 70% of your job, it's going to be your replacement. And this is not just being felt by factory workers, this is going to be felt by people who are so-called mental labor as well, doctors, lawyers, teachers. We're all going to be replaced, and that's the job, and it's profits, as you were pointing out. The thing I also want to talk about is the other pernicious part of this that people often don't talk about with regards to AI development, and that's in data collection. So has anybody heard of a digital twin? Okay. This is an important term. I was at a conference, it was a Zoom conference of people who were having questions about the development of general artificial intelligence. And these are all tech people, kind of not the top capitalists, but kind of the low-level capitalists who are having startups like Scale Up and things like that. They're like, what are we doing here with AI? And at the end of, and they were posing like, maybe this thing could do really damage. Maybe we're leading us to a dystopic future. Like, they were concerned about that. But there were other people who were saying like, no, this is going to be the greatest thing for healthcare and all that kind of stuff, which it's not, but some people believe that. But the end of the presentation, we saw a digital twin of Reid Hoffman. Now, what is a digital twin? A digital twin is all the data that is collected about a person being assembled by an AI and a reconstruction of their personality and image and things like that. So what that meant is Reid Hoffman was there on a YouTube screen. It wasn't Reid Hoffman, it was a creation of Reid Hoffman, speaking in French or German, but basically responding like Reid Hoffman based on all the writings, all the data that had been collected on him. Now here's the thing to know. Digital twins are not just being made of Reid Hoffman, they're being made of all of us. Through how we use our phone, how we use a computer, any keystroke you use, when you erase that keystroke, all of that information is being collected, and to date, it has not been able to be utilized and collected. Like Edward Snowden talked about, collect it all, the NSA and things like that. They have not been able to collect all that data and use it. That is no longer the case. AI can now collect that data and learn from that data, which is what AI development is all about. Now that's going to be important because in addition to knowing that they're going to wipe out our jobs, they know there's going to be a response to this. But if you collect all the data on all the people and basically create digital twins of all of them, you can model, you can game how you can control people in response to whatever's happening. Basically, the AI will play a character of you, an avatar, and decide, here's what you need to see, here's what your feed needs to be in order to kind of shunt you in a general direction. So the data collection that's happening here is not just about advertising or the things that we talk about like that. It's not just, oh, somebody's making money off the data they're collecting. We're literally training our AI not just to replace us, but to help the government learn how to control us and manipulate us, which this thing called a digital twin. So they're thinking on all ends of this stuff. They know they're bringing in a dangerous thing, and I completely agree with Guido that they're working with powers that could not just destroy the working class, which I don't think they mind that, but may destroy humanity. And I think it is likely will destroy humanity, whether it be through the AI getting over on us because it goes from general intelligence to superintelligence, or the fact that AI is going to be used to monitor Tomahawk missiles going across the Ukraine border. And so the AI in Russia has decided, I'm sorry, we got to let the missiles fly now, because that's what has to happen. So all of those things, militarily or socially, are dangerous. And so for me as a teacher, I can see that not only are the teachers union not doing anything about it, but frankly, my colleagues as teachers. I've been outspoken at my school opposed to, I say, I don't use ChatGPT or anything to develop lesson plans. And that's seen as cute, to be honest. Like, well, that's kind of neat. There's one teacher I know who knows I'm going to stop AI and is interested in it, but by and large, teachers complain about students using it for ChatGPT, but they do not understand, and that's only a piece of the threat. The massive threat is us using Google Classroom, us using all these scripted curriculums and things like that, and even us using all these platforms to develop lessons like this that AI can develop for us. Every time we do that, we are training our replacement. And so teachers think this, and it is true, teachers are having a tougher time in the classroom, so they're looking for any shortcut they can do. But this shortcut turns out to be a dead end into ending our jobs. So for me, I'm looking to find other teachers at my site, and I'm working at a Golden State Prep at Aspire. It's a middle school in Oakland. And that's where I think the fight is going to have to be waged at any workplace, which is basically, I'm going to refuse to use AI, I'm going to refuse to use this ed tech stuff, and I'm going to try to get other teachers to do the same. That's a long, well, if it's a long road, then I think we are cooked. But I do believe in the short term, those are the sorts of things that teachers are going to have to do. So that was it for me. Should I take a question or other?
Yeah, we can do questions.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how do you feel about this process in terms of, because like now with how companies collect data and then sell this data to other companies, right? Essentially people have become the commodity.
Yeah.
So what do you say in terms of like this process in towards the commodification of essentially human beings, right? And not just our data, but our own selves, right? Because that's, when you brought up the data twin, that's immediately what I thought about.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very badly about it. Like I'm scared of it in a way that I didn't know to be scared of it before. Before, I just thought it was irritating that companies were getting over on us and like getting money off of our data. Now, I'm like scared that something much more pernicious is at play, and that in the same way that you talked about, like there's living labor of the human, and we produce dead labor in our tools and things like that, in a sense, our actual identities are being turned into a kind of object outside of ourselves to be used against ourselves. And that's, I think, extremely scary. But it's also, if I was at the top of society and I knew I was going to split if I was going to separate wealth in the way that I'm doing, I would do exactly the same thing they're doing. I mean, I would do it. And that's why I'm like, it makes sense.
Because it supports the profit motive against the richer.
And it assures control under conditions under immense misery. It was not fun in 2010. It was not fun in 2020. The next one is going to be worse, right? The next business cycle. And they know that. And they know that they're putting forces in play which are going to make people really pissed. And they're going to use data and AI not just as a means of replacing us, but a mechanism of control and nudging. Like, do you want to go this way? Maybe you want to go that way. And that's where your feed will come in, and that's all going to be personalized in the same way that so that's how I see it working. And they're so tired, it's going to tend them to move in the idea of this is an assistant, right? So there's and I agree with you, Steve, that this is a global problem, but on the ground, this is a problem because I want to speak to that part for those of us on the ground in the working class, like, how is this coming? So the first problem is for workers who are totally overworked, being offered this assistant that can maybe cut a few hours off of your week of work. I'm asking those people, are you sure this is an assistant or this is a replacement? No. And so they haven't even gotten to that point. If they think it's an assistant and not a replacement, then there's no discussion about stopping it. Then we're done. Like, why discuss, right? But even once they agree it's a replacement, then we get to this debate. Is this a technology that can be used to actually help humanity if we have a revolution? Or is this a technology that must be eradicated? That it's actually a tool that is not neutral, like when people think of a hammer as neutral. This is not a neutral tool, but an actual tool that's like, to use religious terms, the devil's work, that is not going to be able to be utilized the way that Luddites saw the textile mills and things like that, the textiles that were coming in. And so once we get to the place of saying, okay, we recognize this as a threat, then I think the next debate, and we haven't gotten there yet, among teachers, our unions are supporting it and teachers are supporting it. Overwhelmingly are supporting it, and that means they're going to be supporting the data collection operation that those 100,000, because that's what students using AI is, a data collection operation, to train AI and to make digital twins out of everyone, because they need to know who everyone is, because we're going to controlling everyone. So first we have to get to the point where people recognize it's an actual threat. The next debate I think we have to have is it a threat in which we can take this tool and use it for purposes of humanity, or is this something that's just going to have to be gotten rid of? I fall on that second side. I'm not saying I'm right, but that's where I'm at. But I think we can all fight it, and figure it out along the way. But we're not even there, in my opinion.
Okay, then, yeah, okay, yeah.
So I'm a community college teacher, computer science actually, and I was wondering how that would be actually operationalized, because if you're using students' data to build your learning, using an AI system, I would expect that to be a privacy issue, like FERC laws. So how are they getting around that?
There's no getting around it. It's already been sold. There's no privacy. There's none of those laws stop any of this stuff from going. PERB, HIPAA, like HIPAA is going to be, doesn't affect your privacy. It's actually a control. HIPAA is actually saying we have the right to collect all that data. All right? So there is no privacy concerns with regards to it, or that are even explained. And in reality, like once we decided to go this way, that phone thing, once we decided to go there, we gave it all up.
The problem is, as I was saying earlier, the unions, business unions, take money from these companies.
Yeah.
If you're taking money from Google, which they are, they took money from privatizers who wanted to set up charter schools. Randy Weingarten worked at the Green Dot Charter School. She was a charter school teacher. If you take money from, charter schools, people who want to privatize, you are basically undermining public education. Having a meeting, this is very important, having a meeting like on taking money from these companies to train you in AI, having a public meeting and getting teachers and other workers to come to that meeting would be a good way of having a discussion. Like, what's going on? Why are we taking money from the very companies who basically are techno-fascist? These people want to destroy public education. They want to destroy unions, and that's what's happening.
I want to show you a very pernicious way where they've already gotten into this. You know about social emotional learning programs and things like that. You're aware that before all these computers, when you log in and you take that standardized test, or usually anything from the ed tech product, one of the first questions they'll ask you is, how are you feeling today? Right? They give you a little smile meter. How are you feeling today? And then at the end, absolutely, all of them. And at the end, they ask them, how are you feeling now? Because all of that is basically a precursor to wanting them to see how well where you came in your terms of your emotional state. That stuff's going to be partially checked with the facial recognition they do. They say they're feeling sad. We have the facial recognition stuff. We're going to link that to sadness. We're going to be able to then say that whenever we see this person looking that way, because now they have facial recognition, which is on video and things like that, we can predict how that person's feeling. They told us they were feeling this way. We took the snapshot of their picture. That's what they look like when they're feeling that way. And then secondly, once they do the various things, they're going to ask you that question again. Like they want to kind of check those sorts of things. So all of this is not, these computers and programs aren't doing this to do wellness checks. They're doing it to collect data so that they can control us. And that's what we have to understand. It's a military product. It has nothing to do with the well-being of our students or helping us teach. It is a military project. Ultimately really going to be used to make war. That's probably the biggest use of it, but under the same conditions, you all have to control the population when you do that. And it has, just leave aside any notion that these companies have anything to do with profits, anything other than profits and control. And then you can understand what's happening.
Yeah, I was a public school music teacher, and as such I saw lots of different classes in single digits.
We have an important speaker who has an experience about AI from the ground floor at Amazon and now studying it. So welcome, Adrienne Williams.
I think, especially when you talk about tech workers, I don't think it's fair to say that they think they're above the workers and that they don't care. You have No Tech for Apartheid, you have Amazon employees for climate justice, you have a lot of tech workers that are trying really hard. A lot of them that I've spoken with have this attitude where it's like, I don't think I deserve to say anything. I get paid really well, so I just need to shut up and do my job because I don't have the right to say anything. And I think a lot of them are waking up to the fact that you are being overworked the same way low-wage workers are being overworked. When you talk to Amazon employees, they have an on-call system where once, I don't know how many times a year, but if you're on call for a week. I've talked to women who said Amazon wakes them up more than their newborn babies. They say when you're on that week, you can't go on a date, You can't go to a graduation. You can't have any other life but that week of Amazon. And they know it's wrong, and they don't sleep, and they're up all day, but they're like, I get paid really well, so who am I to say anything, right? But we're in this country, we kind of lost the idea of like, you have the right to your own time. You have the right to be off. We're not supposed to be working. We're not supposed to be like living to work, right? We're supposed to work so we can live. And when you pay people well, they kind of brainwash them into thinking that, well, you're paid well, so whatever I want from you, if I want blood, I get it because I pay you well. And so I think tech workers are starting to wake up to the fact that like, okay, yeah, you pay me well, but I'm actually good at my job and I have a skill. That's why you pay me well. Not because I'm beholden to you, not because I'm your slave, but because I went to school, I have a skill, it's very marketable, therefore I get paid well. And when I'm off, I get to be off. I shouldn't have to wake up at 3 a.m. and get dressed and go down because there's this like little minor problem. So I think the tech workers actually are doing a lot of good work. I know AECJ, the Amazon Employees for Climate Justice, their whole thing is like, these companies are going into countries and neighborhoods where they believe nobody cares about those people. And then they are going to put all their trucks there, all their planes there, all the pollution there, anything they want to discard, they're going to put there. And so because they're tech workers and because they know they have some power that sometimes a driver or warehouse worker doesn't have, they really push Amazon. They did a walkout, I want to say in like 2019, it was 3,000 tech workers. And they really pushed Amazon to say, no, you're going to abide by these Paris Climate Accords and you're going to do more than that. Now, is Amazon doing that still? Even though they said they were going to? Probably not perfectly, but they really put them on blast and said, we will sit down. We will all sit down. There's another thing with Amazon, the employees got it shut down where, and I might get this a little bit wrong, but basically to find oil deposits in the ground, it usually took a company a couple months, 2, 3, 4 months to find those. Amazon figured out that their tech employees could find those within hours. And so they were pushing their employees to just find them. The employees were like, this is horrible. This is horrible for the planet. This is horrible for our well-being. And they told them, we're not doing it anymore and we'll quit. And Amazon pulled back. So I think instead of feeling like the tech workers think they're above everybody, I think we need to treat tech workers like they are this key ingredient that we have to have and really encourage them to be part of whatever's going on because they have their finger on the button, like they can shut stuff down. And so we need to make them feel like they're important and they're part of this because they really are important and they need to be part of it. In terms of, I see somebody's reading AI Con. It's written by my boss.
Oh.
Yeah, Alex Hanna is my boss.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great book. And I think anybody who wants to understand artificial intelligence better, get that book, The AI Con, because so much of what we know right now and what we hear about with AI, you listen to Good Morning America or the news or something, you think AI is about to solve every problem that we've ever had ever, and we're gonna live in this utopia, and it's nonsense. Most of it is hype. Even the word AI or the term AI is a marketing term. It has nothing to do with what's actually happening. If you say AI to 10 different people are gonna think of different things. Is it speech recognition? Is it decision making? Is it facial recognition? Like all of those things fall into the category of artificial intelligence. People don't really know that because it's hyped up like it's gonna be this thing that's gonna, it's gonna stop wars and it's gonna stop famine, it's gonna stop all these things. And actually what it's doing is it's creating an answer for a problem we don't have and then selling it to us and trying to make us afraid of a problem we don't have, right? It's not the answer. Most of the answers aren't technical answers because all this really boils down to is greed,
Concepts already exist, but they're not profitable, right? Things that profit. And if the machine gives them the same answer, it's still going to say the machine is wrong.
Right. Well, the thing is the machine doesn't have the answer.
No, it doesn't know anything.
A study came out, not too long ago, most of you probably heard it, where it said that these artificial intelligence systems that are like your chat GPTs and things like that, when you ask it a question, it's wrong 71% of the time. Now, if you had a person that you knew and they were wrong 3/4 of the time, you would stop asking that person for advice, right? But like everybody's so mystified by this, like, ooh, this magical, like it's a magic 8 ball. Oh, it's gonna tell my future and tell me what to do. No, it's wrong, because really all it is every single thing that's been scraped off the internet fed back to us. And if you think of what's on the internet, it's horrible what's on the internet. The only thing that makes it palatable for people in Western society is more people in poor countries who sit and dig through the most horrible parts of it to bring humanity to the artificial intelligence. But if you let it just rip and didn't have anybody, looking at the content, labeling things correctly, it just turns into murder, 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 kill, kill, kill. It has no humanity. It's really horrible. So like in our country, even though like answers are wrong and it's not the greatest thing, there's some like semblance of like humanity in it. If you go to some poor countries, it might as well be 4chan, because companies like Meta and Google, and they don't care. They don't care that they don't translate into those languages. They don't care that those things then become these repositories for hate speech and violence, because they don't recognize the language, right? So if you don't recognize the language, and here we are in like Sudan or Myanmar or Eritrea, and people are saying on these sites, like, we're gonna kill this person, if you see these people, they must die, and all these things, they don't understand the language, so they just let it through. And it really aids in genocide and all these other things. So there's bigger issues than like, ooh, ChatGPT can write my paper. Like that's not even new. There were organizations in Kenya where they were getting orders from kids out here and writing their papers anyway. So that's not new. What's new is that we think this is magic and it's gonna solve everything. And it's just degrading the quality of everything we have. It's degrading our schools because we're telling teachers, they don't matter, we can have something better. I used to work at a CZI, Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, junior high, as a teacher. And it was nuts what they wanted from the teachers, and that they actually didn't care that the kids were learning or not. And even as a teacher, we would say like, hey, this isn't right. It feels very carceral, what's happening. And Mark Zuckerberg says straight up, like, I don't feel like teachers are important. All we need is facilitators. Huh? That's a different school. Yeah, that's a different school. So what they had was, Summit Public Schools is where I used to work. And it's a charter school network of, and it's funny because when I first started there in 2017, it was a for-profit charter school. And then California kind of shut that down and said, you can't have for-profit schools. And so then what they did is they just made this umbrella network that was Summit Public Schools, and they're for-profit. But underneath it is all the schools, and they're nonprofit. So really nothing changed. They just kind of like shuffled around the way it works. Same as always. The issue is they have this thing called Summit Solves and Summit Reads. So if your kids can't read, even though we have English teachers that know how to do interventions, you're not allowed to do that for your kids. You have to put them on Summit Reads. Now, if your kids can't read, is it helpful to then put them online where they got to read all the stuff? No. I was graduating 8th graders who couldn't read. I was graduating 8th graders who had like 20% proficiency in math, but if you look at them online and their stats, they'll say, oh, we have a 99% graduation rate. Now they're talking about 12th graders. But then if you look further, they've got like a 28% proficiency in math, 15% proficiency in science, 33% reading rates. So something doesn't add up when you've got kids who can't read or write or do math or understand science, but they're graduating them like nobody's business. I watched this school falsify documents. I watched this school falsify numbers in terms of like who was doing well in testing and this and that. I talked to another teacher from a different summit who said, I've seen admin pull their own credit cards out of their pocket and force 12th graders to apply to, like, say you have a 12th grader that's like, I'm not going to college. My uncle has me hooked up with the union. I'm going to be a plumber. Like, I've got it all set. They're like, no. You're going to apply to this college called University of New Mexico of the Highlands because they have a 100% acceptance rate. And so they force them to apply. They obviously get accepted. And then they go out on all these, like, they've been rated like the Fortune 500's like top charter school network in the whole country because they had like a 100% acceptance rate into college. But what they don't tell you is like how many of those kids are graduating college, because that's a way different number. A lot of those kids never even go, right? And because again, they can't read, they can't write, and it's getting worse with this ChatGPT. But the other part of it is that when I was there, and I left there in 2019, almost 2020, which honestly, I feel like I dodged a bullet because who knew COVID was coming? That just seemed like miserable to be a teacher and do that. But the problem for me was when they would put that platform out for free to other public schools, and they would say, this is gonna help your kids, and then the other schools would kick it out. They would say, my kids are online too long, my kids aren't learning, all these things. And Zuckerberg would say the same thing every time. Oh, if this is happening, if your kids are online too long, you don't know how to work the system. Your kids should only be online for 90 minutes a day. You don't know what you're doing as a district. But I worked at an actual Summit school. My kids were online 4, 5, 6 hours a day. That's the whole day. They were suffering from migraines, neck pain, back pain. Their eyesight was breaking down. The agitation, I could watch my little ones from the first day of school to the last day of school, and they'd just be happy little babies on the first day of school, just loving life. And by the end of school, there were massive fights. Everybody hated each other. It was this agitation of just staring at a screen all day long. And what they wanted was for teachers to just walk back and forth and be like, get back to work. Stop talking, get back to work. But there's no teaching going on. So not only are they agitated from being online, they're agitated because the adults that are supposed to care about them are really just yelling at them all day. Most of what I did as a teacher wasn't the teaching. It was, hey, how you doing? I know yesterday was really hard for you. Or I know you and your best friend have been going through it. Like, how's it going today? Those are the things that kids need. AI can't do that. And this whole idea of like generative AI is a fallacy. There's no such thing as it. It's, again, another marketing term because generative AI is now getting into the idea of care work. So when you start thinking about teachers, nurses, therapists, companions, boyfriends, and girlfriends, first of all, that's nuts. Don't date your phone, please. It's not gonna work.
You ever seen her?
I haven't, but I know what movie you're talking about. And it seemed crazy when the movie came out. And now the fact that that's something that people are really doing it makes me sad because people are losing the ability to just have conversations. And so you hear Sam Altman and Zuckerberg and all these people say like, I lost my train of thought. This is what happens when you get older. You have a thought and it disappears.
You never saw a child hug a computer.
Ever. As much as they love their phones, they're not even hugging that. They're not. But the care work is the part that is the most dangerous because if you let someone go long enough with an AI therapist, it always tells somebody to kill themselves. If you let somebody go long enough on an AI system that talks about eating disorders, it eventually tells them to starve themselves. It is not a person. It does not do care work. It will never do care work. Yet that's where they're trying their hardest to implement it. And you'll hear them talk about like, well, we don't need all these jobs. And now all of a sudden, because they're good Samaritans, they really care about universal basic income. And for me, that's terrifying. Because back in the day, Martin Luther King was talking about universal basic income as a way to subsidize a shitty job or bad pay. What they're saying is, we want to make sure we subsidize zero pay and zero jobs. So if you think about it, it's this way of saying, you'll have no control. That's a level of corporate control we don't understand, when they're basically just going to dole us out an allowance and there is no job to go to, which I don't think is actually going to happen. I think they want us to think that. I think jobs will shift. I think things will change. But I think you give it some years and people are going to start realizing that this AI doesn't work for what they want it to work for. It's been around for 70, 80 years, slowly doing work in the background on things that it actually can do the work on. So like cancer, science, and trying to find, why this thing, this tumor reacts to this and not that, and all these type of things, and I'm not a scientist, so I'm not gonna say any of that, right? But it's been doing good work there. It has not been making mistakes. It has not been blowing up communities. It's now that they wanna put it into the idea of being a friend, being a family member, being a therapist, being a teacher. That's where it doesn't work. And so I don't think the idea is to say, get rid of AI altogether, because there are places where it does good work, but it's like saying, well, I have this great lawnmower and I love it, and so I'm gonna now use it to, clean my carpets. Well, no, it doesn't work on carpets, it works on grass. And so that's what they're doing with AI. You know, it has ways that it works really well, but the money is not necessarily in those ways. They can make money by saying, you won't ever have to pay another teacher again. Just let us get our technology in there. You'll never have to pay more than 10 nurses. You can get yourself from 150 nurses down to a dozen because our AI will diagnose everything. Yet I've talked to nurses who are like, AI can't see, it can't tell the difference between a patient that came in today and an hour later their skin tone is redder than it was an hour before. AI misses that. But I can tell that the sweat and the bright skin and the this and the that means they're on the verge of a heart attack. AI will miss that every time. It's the interpersonal connections that artificial intelligence, it's artificial. Think of one artificial thing that you can think of that's better than the real thing. Artificial grass blows your knees out. You know, artificial sweetener gives you cancer. There's not one artificial thing that is better than the real thing. So, I mean, I think what you were saying, Steve, about like there needs to be this other party is spot on, because right now the politicians are hypnotized. They don't understand this technology and they only invite in the tech CEOs to explain it to them, which means they're just repeating the mistakes of the past where we only listen to the research from Exxon to tell us about global warming. You know, we only listen to the research from Marlboro to tell us about lung cancer when it comes to cigarettes. They're doing the exact same thing with artificial intelligence. I went to this thing in DC where we were working on the AI Bill of Rights. And it was researchers and scientists and activists and teachers and all these people. And they had us down the street from the White House at it was a nice hotel, everybody doing their thing there. The week before, because they said they wanted to know about artificial intelligence, they had Elon Musk and Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg and all the people at the White House, in the room with the president, talking to him. So if they won't listen to the researchers and the scientists and the people that know what they're talking about, and they only listen to basically the hype man, because that's all it is. These dudes know that it's not doing everything that they want it to do, but they know it's making them a ton of money. We have to first get the politicians to kind of get their heads out of their asses. I spoke to both Governor Bobby Scott, which is like Virginia or something, and then James Clyburn at this stupid Mississippi policy conference held by the Congressional Black Caucus. And I spoke to both of them and said, hey, I used to be a teacher for one of these charter schools that the tech companies are running. You know, their whole goal is to break down public education. They're trying to dismantle it. This was before the election. And both of these men basically called me a liar to my face. Even though I was invited to that conference as an expert panelist, they told me that's not happening. It's at least not happening in my state. And I'm like, it absolutely is happening in your state. I can give you data to show it. If one of you had even bothered to show up to the panel that I was on, you would have known that this is happening. Nope, that's not happening in my state. Then the election hits, and Project 2025 comes out, and now I see them all on CNN clutching their pearls like, oh my God, they're trying to dismantle education. I've been screaming this for the past 7 years. Nobody. They were looking at me like I was a Bigfoot hunter. Like, she's crazy. There's no way they're gonna dismantle education. Now, it's like we could have gotten in front of this. At 7 years, I was talking to NAACP, the ACLU. Nobody wanted to hear it. The ACLU told me straight up, we gotta make sure that we're not getting money from CZI. That'll tell me if we can help you, and I guarantee that's why you won't find any help. But this is an organization that's supposed to work for working class Americans, and yet CZI keeps the lights on. So if our politicians aren't willing to listen to people on the ground floor, we are always gonna be doomed. Because the people on the ground floor are the only ones that know what's going on. Rich folks don't know what's going on. I wish I could be so privileged to not know what's going on. It must feel great. But those who work in the factories, those who work as drivers, those who work as teachers and nurses, they know what's going on because they're on the ground floor. Nobody wants to listen to them. So I think when we talk about like what's work gonna look like with this new AI, I think there's actually a lot of opportunity, but it's not technical opportunity. It's like, can you read and write and speak really well? Can you hold a conversation and speak on your feet? We're gonna need people who wanna be attorneys and not corporate attorneys. Can you be civil rights attorneys and fight for poor people? Because it's gonna get harder and harder to prove your case when everything's hidden in these clouds. Can you be a real teacher? I'm so against charter schools, but I've been telling people lately, get into this charter school game because they're going to dismantle public education. And so we need communities to say, okay, cool, well, if you're gonna do that, I'm gonna take hold of my community then. We're gonna have our own charter school, and it's not gonna be tech focused. It's gonna be reading and writing with pencils, because if you look at the richest people, your Elon Musks and your Mark Zuckerbergs, they don't let their kids go to school with technology. Those ritzy private schools, they have double to triple the staff, they write with pens and pencils, they do real art, they do experiments in science, they do what you need to do to actually be intelligent. Whereas our kids, they're like, just throw them on a computer. Just throw them on a computer, who cares? I had one little girl when I was a junior high teacher who came in, she was extremely developmentally delayed. Like, she shouldn't have been at our school. She read probably, as a 7th grader, she probably read at a kindergarten or 1st grade level. She needed real special education, which we did not provide. And their solution for her was, instead of telling the parents, you know what, this is not a good fit for her. No, just throw her on, and it was a different online learning website. Just throw her on there. But this is a little girl who cannot read and cannot keep up with the rest of the class. So they were gonna isolate her when she needed more attention into being on a platform that we didn't even teach, just so they could keep that money coming in.
I was just gonna ask, so obviously we do need a workers' party, and the workers' party will provide the infrastructure to support initiatives like that, like community-run learning and things like that. So I'm just wondering, what do you think are some ways that a hypothetical up-and-coming workers' party can reach out to these communities and get their insight and listen to the people on the ground, so that they can develop the infrastructure for these types of programs, in your example for a community school?
I think, go ahead.
No,
I think it's gonna be slow and tedious. I mean, I think it really takes going through the neighborhoods, throwing barbecues, throwing picnics, throwing things to say, come on out. Let's just talk about what's going on. Tell me what your schools are like. Well, here's my idea for how we can fix that. I think it's not something that can be, you know, a lot of times it's like all this big hype, like what the big parties do. We're gonna throw these parties and this and that. And I think what people really want, first of all, working people are tired. So when I'm talking to people about like strikes or anything else that involves workers, I'm way more willing to go sit at the Capitol and scream at these politicians before I am to sit there and scream at these workers to get off their ass and go protest, go do this, go do that. The people I talk to that are working class people, your Amazon drivers, your warehouse workers, teachers, nurses, they're exhausted. To tell them to go do more work on the one day, maybe the one half a day they have off, is unrealistic. I think for me, if it was me, and I'm not a politician, but if it was me, I would start with the platforms they're on to relax. So I might be on TikTok, I might be on Instagram, and give them little nuggets of like, here's where we're at, and here's what you're getting, and here's what we could get. All I need you to do is sign this petition. All I need you to do is support this politician, because here's what this person is gonna do for you. I think we have to make it a low lift for people, because you have people that are working one main job and maybe 2 side jobs and still have kids and still have groceries, and everything's getting more expensive. The burnout from just regular working people is so insane that I think you have a lot of well-meaning union people especially who want to rile people up and get them in the streets. And I just don't think that that's the way to go when it comes to the massive amount of working people, especially older ones. Anybody like 35 and older, I don't think you're gonna see them hitting the streets. The youngsters, yeah, they got energy, cool. They could do that and go party and wake up the next day and all good. I remember being in my 20s. But when you're older, like, you're not gonna do that. And so I think if you can give them little tidbits of like, this can be better, it doesn't have to be like this. You know, there's this idea, and it's been pushed by the politicians and the business people, that AI is inevitable. And what's happening is inevitable, which is nonsense. AI is programming. It doesn't have to be here, and we can control how it works for us. So I think giving them those little tidbits, reminding them that none of this is inevitable, and we don't want anything from you. We just want you to vote for the person who cares about you the most. I think that's how you're gonna get people to do that. In terms of the community schools, I think you have to reach out to the activists. I think you have to reach out to the teachers. to the people who that's already kind of their wheelhouse? Because that sounds completely overwhelming to a parent who just wants their kid in a better school. Yeah. You're Rideshare Drivers United? Yeah. I've done stuff with you guys. Oh, okay. Yeah. And it's a legitimate problem.
I would say, though, that, I mean, basically, for example, special ed, the destruction of Title I is going to take away funding for special ed. It's going to take away funding for disabled students. We're talking about these people, these young people, losing what they have now. In San Francisco, they're going to lay off teachers, special ed teachers, because there's no more money for it. We're facing a frontal attack on our basic rights. Disabled students should have special training. They need it, and they're getting rid of it. So again, this raised the question of a Labor Party, because the Democrats, it's an emergency situation. There is no emergency for the unions at this point, even though they're under a brutal attack, frontal brutal attack. When they talk about getting rid of Title I, when they talk about NIH, destroying NIH, they're going to lay off thousands of educators, of researchers at UC and other public institutions to destroy it. Class struggle, protecting what we have. I mean, they want to get rid of special ed teachers. That's what the destruction of Title I is. I mean, there is not going to be any protection against discrimination. They're closing down the Department of Education. Let it rip. They're saying we're going to get rid of all the protections people have in this country and just deregulate, let people be on their own. And that's going to lead to incredible attacks on people. Systemic racism. They want to go back to segregation. That's what they really want. That's why they don't want to talk about the Civil War. We don't need to learn about what happened in the Civil War. I mean, this is what they are actually saying. I mean, so people have to face reality of what's going on. If you can't face reality, how terrible it is, then you can't deal with it. And that's what we have to do today. That's why we're talking about AI, because it's a discussion that has to take place among working people. You can't go around it. It's in front of us. It's happening right here in the streets of San Francisco with these autonomous cars. And it's just as our next speaker is James Year. He's helped produce the film that we showed earlier about driverless trucks. And that's, I mean, going to throw millions of people out of work. There's so many drivers now.
It's turning trucks into weapons also. That's the thing that's scary.
I characterize myself as a neo-Luddite more than anything else. But you know, like the best and most informative like historical examples of this trend that we're going through now is the first industrial revolution, right? So like that was basically a transformation between feudalism to capitalism, and that fucking sucked for anybody that lived through it, right? And you know, it turns out with the Luddites, they didn't hate the machines; they hate how they were being used against them. And eventually, it led to a revolt, which is, you know, I was talking to another professor over at Oxford. He's an economics historian, and he was saying the same thing. It's like we're on track for something, you know, bad to happen with this. But just like what we said in the video, you know, it's not the tool; it's how you use it, type of a thing. And right now, we have a bunch of sociopaths and psychos that are just running roughshod over everyone. But you know, it turns out there's all these different other communities out there that have. And like, you know, the Black Panthers are a great example. I think it was like their 10th point or whatever, where they wanted community control over technology because it always has, or usually has a tendency to have, you know, racist outcomes where it always goes after people of color, women, and all that kind of stuff. Now it's going after everybody, right? And the thing that made me really hopeful, I never thought I would look to the YouTube comment section as a place for inspiration and hope ever. But, you know, here we are. You know, everybody's on the same page about this, right? And I think the really successful thing about the video is that I got everybody on board, left, right, everybody, because everyone's feeling that anxiety now. You know, but there's plenty of examples of other communities even today, like say the Amish or the Mennonites, where they have a mechanism for controlling how technology is used, and if it creates, you know, they're not as ass backwards as everyone believes. Like I know of an Amish community in upstate New York that has an app development team, you know. You know, like there's ways to thread the needle on this and stuff, but we definitely need more say for sure. And that, yeah, like I'm not anti-AI or robotics or anything else, because, you know, with the climate crisis, with everything else, you know, we've backed ourselves into a pretty dangerous corner, and we have to figure out how to get through it. And we've done that before back in the 1850s, you know, with like the what is it? The Malthusian trap with, you you know, food production is linear and population growth is exponential, right? We solve that through science and technology, right? So I say all that to say, you know, it's kind of a long-winded roundhouse kind of an answer there, but like we do absolutely need this tech. And it just kind of comes down to public versus private ownership, or if there's like, you know, we obviously need some sort of FDA for tech to, you know, check the efficacy, the safety, what the impacts are going to be like in education. Like I teach photography and I can't even get my students to read a fucking syllabus. And I'm basically using my photography class to like deprogram, get the screens out of their face, go out and talk to people and like learn how to be a fucking human again, type of a thing. Cause it's insufferable, for me, it's especially trying to teach these kids. But yeah, and then I was at an AI expo in DC recently, and I was speaking with one of the guys in the emerging technologies department over at the Department of Energy. And as much as I love to shit on all this Silicon Valley psychos out there that are calling all the shots right now, there is one cool thing that's happening, at least with the Department of Energy, where they're basically going to try to teach ChatGPT how to like speak science, because right now it just speaks language, type of a thing. And granted, there's a shitload of dangers with this too. So like I'm not placating or undermining, or I'm not overselling this, right? But basically what the guy was telling me is that like basically you can prompt you know, this science chat GPT is like, hey, I want a cleaner burning diesel fuel that's going to give me better mileage and less emissions. Or you can have a 3D printable type of polymer that anybody could use that would be super strong, you know, break down in the human body naturally, and everyone could, you know, make whatever the hell they want, type of a thing. You know, like there's and the possibilities of that are limitless, you know. So like right now, you know, it's the scariest thing about all this is that you know, the disruptions from an economics history perspective, the disruptions always happen first and the benefits happen later. And the most dangerous thing about this is that the disruptions are happening way faster than they have in the past, but that also means that the benefits could potentially happen faster too. But the part that we have to navigate is like the next 5-10 years or so. And if we nail it now, which I'm not super hopeful of, unless there's a big type of a shit show type of thing. Yeah, it's, you know, we definitely shouldn't put the cat in the bag, and obviously it's never going to go back in the bag, but I think we do need this in some capacity. It just comes down to how much say we all have and how this change happens. I don't entirely disagree with the idea of banning AI entirely, depending on like what specific markets or, you know, functions in society that we have. I think in education, like, you know, I don't know, like if it was up to me, I would ban all smartphones or heavily restrict the use of smartphones until you're 18, because like the brain rot that I see is just unreal, and just the societal damage that that's already doing is just unbelievable. So like, you know, there's definitely an argument to be made for the stop AI crowd, or at least in how we manage and regulate it. But if you go back again to the first industrial revolution, when we were talking about the competition between France and England, England was the first, for a lot of different reasons. England was the first one to do the industrial revolution, right? And you know, the French and English were going back and forth and back and forth. But the entire reason that England dominated the 19th century was because they automated everything, right? And basically, you know, I could talk about this for a while, but because King Louis XVI, and he was a bit of a dumbass, I think we could all agree, didn't do his homework, opened up trade, that basically flooded the market with cheap goods and all that kind of crap. And that was one of the things that precipitated the French Revolution, right? And then all the crazy shit happened in France, right? Right now, we are in a very similar situation between US and China, or between us and China isn't going to stop. Xi Jinping is calling for armies of robots, and they're already experimenting with dark factories where there's no humans whatsoever in them, and hospitals and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I don't have very many nice things to say about, you know, the political system over in China, because it's way, way, way too authoritarian. Well, it's brutally authoritarian, but you know, with their system, they're going to be able to reorganize and, you know, cover all that, all the issues, and give their people something to do. And one of those things that they can do is give them all a gun, you know. And you like right now we're starting to see China flex their muscles and all that kind of shit. So like right now in the broader geopolitical aspect of things, like they are not going to stop. They're going as fast as they possibly can to implement all that kind of shit. And we do have to compete with that to some level. Right. But it's like, that's, like if I would have to place any bets on who's going to win, like the next 100 years, it's definitely going to be them. It's not going to be us. Cause like we have all of these other problems that are intractable that we haven't been able to solve anything for like the last 20 years. And pick your favorite issue, right? Like it's one of those things, like if we're going to navigate this, we have to, figure it out pretty damn fast and like really start working together, set aside some differences and like start building community, whether it, with working class folks on the left and right and all that kind of stuff, and just really figure that out. But it's, like going back to the original point there, like the stop AI folks aren't wrong and, in plenty of context and stuff, but like we still have to consider the bigger picture and how the rest of the world is going to be adapting to this.
One of the other panelists, and just wanted to comment on some of the other things that were said. Well, it's too bad you just missed the Stop AI people because they have sort of a polar opposite take on this. I wanted to address, first of all, one of them said something about this issue of making, what was it, digital twins or something like that. And kind of this perspective of, well, they'll just be able to replace humans at anything. And what follows from that is kind of a despair and, the people in Silicon Valley, I think, have this kind of triumphalist perspective that we'll be able to replace anything. And so human labor really doesn't have any social power. You're obsolete, you can't do anything about this. And I think it's important to push back against that. And that's why I wanted to make this point earlier about actually this is very destabilizing for capitalism. Because it's not just a technical problem. From a technical perspective, yeah, you can go in and you can replace any of these jobs eventually. But the issue is that even if you can digitally clone somebody or whatever and replace all of the work that they do, capitalism is based on wage labor. And a digital clone is still constant capital. No matter how creative it might be, it's bought and sold as a commodity. It's subjected to competitive pressures. So it's not able to act as a source of profit. So, and that's not because of any magical property of human labor. That's just because that is how capitalism is structured. It's a social system. It's not just technical production in the abstract. It's not production directly for use. It's production for exchange. So when you bring in automation to a great extent and you displace all of this human labor, what you are doing actually is undermining the social basis of the capitalist system. And that's why Marx is very relevant. And so the capitalist triumphalism is premature. There is going to be a crisis of profitability. There already is, but it's going to be exacerbated. And there is going to be a crisis of unemployment. And so over the next couple of decades, to the extent that they succeed in bringing in automation, they're going to cause a crisis. So that's a hopeful perspective. That's a revolutionary perspective. That is Marx set out from the basis. His insight, his materialist conception of history was no social system leaves the stage until it has exhausted its potential to develop the productive forces, until it becomes a fetter on the development of the productive forces. And when that happens, then you get a social revolution. And that's why he spent such a huge amount of time on economics, was to understand what are the laws of motion of the capitalist system, and what are the conditions, in what way does its development create the conditions for whatever comes next. And his discovery about the tendency of the rate of profit to fall was the outcome of that investigation. And AI pushes that tendency, which has always been latent in capitalism, to its limit. So that's a revolutionary thing to realize. The other thing I wanted to say, I think your comments, I agree with them completely from the social aspects of them. I disagree completely with them on the technical aspects. I don't think it's true that AI is just hype or a con, and that this has been here for 80 years and there's nothing new and it's just scraping information from the internet and so on. What AI is actually, it is fundamentally reproducing some of the aspects of human intelligence. And the AI of 60, 70 years ago when the field began was a fundamentally different type of AI based on manipulating symbols. The current AI is much more closely related to what the human brain does, and it is a kind of general learning machine. It can learn just about any kind of useful thing from data, and we don't program it. What we program is basically just an empty brain full of a network of neurons and a process by which those neurons learn to tune their connections and learn from data. And then the learning process is what puts all of the information into the brain. And so that's what makes it very powerful, and also that's why we don't understand these things that we're building, because we're not building them, the learning process builds them. And so actually, they are very dangerous, and I think the Stop AI people are right about that. Actually, I think that it is an existential danger, but where I would disagree with the Stop AI people is that I think they don't really have a working class orientation. I don't think that demonstrating in front of OpenAI headquarters, I mean, it's something, but ultimately you need masses of people. And I don't think just saying, this is going to cause the end of the world, I don't think that is going to build a mass movement. I think that people have to see, even if it's true, yeah. So, okay, that's all.
A couple things. I'm not saying that AI itself is a con, but the idea of generative AI is very much a con. It's very much about how do we make money through things that AI is not really set up to do. It's not set up to be a person. And so this idea that it thinks or that it learns, or AI is a pattern recognizer and a pattern regurgitator. But I think the other thing when we talk about AI solving these problems, I think people need to understand how these people think. So has anybody heard of this idea of the TESCREAL bundle? Has anybody heard of that? Thank you, okay. So it's a set of ideas that many of the TESCREAL, it's TESCREAL, it's an acronym. And it's just a set of beliefs that many of these, most of these tech bros believe. And it's not science. It is religion at this point, and it's on par with Scientology. And basically what it is we believe that we are going to be able to upload our brains into the cloud and merge with machines and colonize space. And then we're gonna bring consciousness to the rest of the universe, which if you look around, sorry bro, somebody beat you to it, because we're conscious right now. And their whole idea of like long-termism and effective altruism is this idea that we want to build on the net positive of human beings' happiness, except we believe that in long term, we're gonna be in these digital societies with digital sims, and so we wanna prioritize their happiness, let's say 1,000,000 years from now, and not who's here today. So if you think about that, all the things that are happening, it's happening from a place of we don't give a crap what happens to y'all today, because we're building on the happiness of basically a Sims society 1,000,000 years from now, because they think they're gonna be able to somehow merge and float away. Well, that's nuts. And that is very much what they believe. So I think every time you see some new thing that's like, oh, here's a solution, I think you need to be leery of it, because they're not even really in love with humanity. They want to leave their bodies because our bodies are flawed and they're crap, and we need to upload our brains because we want to live forever. It's a nutso idea. I'm not making it up. Please look it up for yourselves. So every time they come up with these solutions, we need to recognize that it's not a solution for us. It's a solution for who knows who 1,000,000 years from now.
Okay, can I respond very briefly to that? Okay, sorry. Yeah, well, I mean, I agree that those people are crazy and they have a crazy ideology, but the question of whether AI thinks and whether it learns is a separate question, and it has to be approached on the basis of engaging with the science. And the reality is that it's not just some mere pattern recognition system. The general approach is very similar in many ways to what happens in a human brain, and it's a very general way to. It's very capable. It's very general. There are some things that are missing, but there is no reason to believe that there are fundamental reasons why this paradigm of machine learning is going to hit some kind of wall that will, before we get to something comparable or even more sophisticated than human intelligence. In my view, that absolutely is going to happen. The human brain is material like anything else in the natural world, and the basic laws that govern its operation can be discovered and reproduced. And we are well on the path of doing that. And that is really not a good thing, actually. And so the Stop AI people are right on that aspect of things.
I want to hear his overall.
So our next speaker is Marc Gruber, and he is the with the Taxi Workers Alliance in San Francisco. And we have been fighting for many years to protect the taxi industry. And one of the things that has happened is deregulation, which happened under, actually Carter was a big deregulator, deregulating the airlines and others to make things more efficient. But the introduction of deregulation destroyed working conditions. It bankrupted airline workers' unions. The aim of it was to make it more profitable for the capitalists by lowering the wages of workers by deregulation. And in San Francisco, the taxi cab workers used to be Teamsters, and it was a living wage job as Teamsters here. Benefits, conditions, healthcare, workers' comp, and many years ago with deregulation, they made everyone an independent contractor in San Francisco. So this, I think, is a prime lesson about what happens with deregulation for workers. And since that time, the drivers have been fighting to protect their conditions and to fight to have a living wage and living conditions. And the reality is now that the city has been taken over by the Sam Altmans, the Uber and Lyft. They run things, and we just had a panel actually on privatization in San Francisco, contracting out of public services, privatization of Golden Gate Park, privatization of Keysar Stadium, and also Uber now being allowed by the mayor to go on Market Street, which was supposed to be a street free of vehicles, most vehicles, and now the Uber is going to go on. So, and also lastly, Elon Musk says he's going to have his taxis, dangerous taxis on the streets, and it hasn't even been approved yet, and he's saying that they're going to do it anyway, which is how Elon Musk operates. I'm going to do it, see if you can stop me. So welcome, Marc.
Glad to be here. I've been a taxi driver for some 40 years, and currently driving with Green Cab, and I've seen enormous changes in our industry, and I want to talk about that, but before I do that, I wanted to talk, or at least bring up on a more general basis, what's been going on with AI. And I'm sure that some of you have seen this around town. It's a bus stop ad. Stop hiring humans, and then with an asterisk, for work they hate. And then it says the era of AI employees is here. They're not being defensive or apologetic about it all. It's the typical, tech universe, in your face. Let's break things down and recreate them according to our means and our needs. Well, I have some questions about this. First of all, how many people really do hate their job? But let's assume that some do. So if they do, why are they doing it? Because it's a job that they need. So the answer is not to replace them with a robot. The answer is to turn it into a job that they like, turn it into the conditions under which they feel that they are being productive and doing something that is a contribution to humanity. So taxi drivers are, among the workers who are most under the gun right now, because first we had Uber and Lyft, which was bad enough. With the deregulation that Steve was talking about, it's been a race to the bottom for the past dozen years or so. And now, of course, we have Waymo. And Waymo it's a threat to the working drivers. It's also a threat to the public. These vehicles have not been properly vetted. The regulators, which are the DMV and the California Public Utilities Commission, do not actually test those vehicles before they go on the street. They rely on the self-certification of the manufacturers that they are up to the task. And before we had Waymo, we had Cruise. And when Cruise went onto the streets, there were all kinds of signals that they did not belong there. Their vehicles were blocking intersections, driving erratically. I saw myself, I saw one of them that was just sort of lurching up the street in bits and starts and stopping for 10 seconds and lurching forward. Created all kinds of havoc. There were, I think, 70 or 80 incidents in which they were blocked emergency vehicles, mostly fire trucks, either on their way to or doing their job. One of them actually ran into a fire truck. All of these incidents, and yet the regulators allowed them to keep operating until one of them ran over a woman and then dragged her for some 20 feet along the ground because the vehicle didn't realize that there was a human being under its wheels. So finally they suspended them and actually never actually terminated their ability to do this permanently. It was Cruise itself that decided that they just weren't going to make it, probably for financial reasons more than anything else, because at that point, people had lost so much confidence in them that it was doubtful that they would have many people using their vehicles. So this is the conditions and the situation that we have, and now we have Waymo, and Waymo's track record is better, but only by comparison. They had close to 700 accidents, not just in San Francisco, but in San Francisco and the other places that they operate, but mostly in San Francisco because they've been here the longest and they have the most vehicles here. Almost 700 accidents since they started in 2021 up to the end of 24, and I don't have actual statistics for 25, but there were at least 190 some odd accidents by March of this year. So these things keep building upon themselves. They also block streets. They've also hampered firefighting operations. They claim that they're not at fault in most of these accidents, but it's purely self-reporting. They submit the reports to the government agencies that demand them, and they assign, the cause to the accident. So it's simply not anything that you could rely upon. So the regulators have been missing in action. They've been purely reactive. What we need is proactive regulation of these vehicles so that when they do things like this, first of all, they are tested in the first place. They are monitored in their actions, and as soon as there's a problem, something is done. These companies have on several occasions taken their vehicles off the street to update their software because of problems that the companies have discovered. But the regulators need to be on top of this as well. Beyond their actions on the street and their interaction with the public, there are numerous other problems that are lurking in the future. These are vehicles that are, on the internet. Are they subject to hacking? Well, what nowadays is not subject to hacking? What if somebody gets hold of one of them or an entire fleet of these things? These things are basically drones. And we know what, uses drones are being put to. What if there's a natural disaster and their communications are cut? We have hundreds of these things on the street right now. Waymo won't even tell the city how many vehicles they have out there. We know that it's at least 300. It's probably more like 700. And we just don't know this because they're not cooperating with the city. What if these 700 vehicles, probably soon to be 1,000 and who knows how many more, lose their communications? You're going to have a wasteland of stalled vehicles across a city where maybe we've had an earthquake or some other natural disaster, and they're going to be in the way of the emergency vehicles. They're going to be in the way of the rescuers. At one point, the city of San Francisco was talking about using taxi cabs as actually an emergency fleet to help in a disaster, to move people around, to move supplies around, because as long as the roads are passable, we are out there, we can be out there, we can help. If we have that kind of a disaster with Waymos out there, they're going to be hampering the operations. They're just going to be in the way. So there just needs to be a lot more oversight, regulation, and determination of whether these vehicles are really up to the task. There is one thing that I can ask you to do. It's a small thing, but there is a movement right now to keep Waymo off of Market Street. Right now, Market Street is reserved for Muni, for taxis, for bicycles, scooters, pedestrians. Waymo is trying to work its way onto Market Street, and they have the support of the mayor, and they are now mapping Market Street so that their vehicles can operate on Market Street. And there is a movement in town to prevent that, keep Market Street moving, and it's a huge coalition of bicycle coalition, taxi workers, Sierra Club, various pedestrian and transit-related organizations. So if you like, there is a flyer on the desk there. You can scan the QR code and sign a petition, or you can go to the website, keepmarketstreetmoving.org, and do that. But that's a small thing. Another thing that has to be done is, let me say the main thing that has to be done is protecting the workers who are going to be suffering the consequences in all aspects of AI, but certainly including cab drivers who are going to be the victims of this tech frenzy that's going on. So basically what we need is to have government action that ensures that the work that humans can best do continues to be done by humans. And that includes taxi drivers and many, many others. And where workers are replaced, because this, realistically, this is going to happen. There need to be really, really strong protections for those workers who were replaced. Wage guarantees, so somebody who loses their job can continue to live a decent life. If they take another job at half the pay, they need to have that pay supplemented and reimbursed so that they can live the life that they have been living. There needs to be education and training for people so that they can find other kinds of jobs. There need to be other sort of forms of support. Relocation assistance so that workers who can't find work in one location can move to another, and the kinds of assistance that allow workers to continue their lives with dignity and with economic security. And I'll stop right there.
Algorithmic control of wages, we all kind of know that's coming to some degree, and it's happening right now for Uber and Lyft drivers. It's happening both on the driver's side and on the passenger side. So if you're noticing like what you're being charged as a passenger going up, they're using your data to see how much money they can get from you. And the drivers are being paid as little as they can figure out how to pay us for whatever ride. One of the side effects of this is the more desperate you are as a driver, the less they're going to pay you. The way I think about this is what we're looking at there is just money leaving the local community, kind of the same way it does when somebody gets a Waymo, right? Like, I think it's bad to be paid very, very low. I think it's bad when a robot takes your job, but I think it's important to point to other people in the community and say, look, you used to have customers that were drivers, right? Or they used to make more money, A little bit of this is about the flow of money in the local economy. I think that it's good for your union to say, look, you don't want to be fired. But for the general public, I think an important way to frame it is to say, look, this is a big company just taking money out of our local community. These are the people that you meet each day that buy stuff at the corner store or whatever it is, and that this all is impacting you and that it's going to a capitalist, right? Just all these changes that are happening are just taking money and giving it to incredibly rich people already. So I think that's the best way to frame the struggle, actually, is to say, look, these are the human faces of the people around you who are being ripped off, and you need to keep the money and fight the capitalists. Just shut these things down. The Waymos are just going to be taking every dollar you spend on it is just leaving San Francisco. So that's the way I think of framing these things in a useful way.
Let me just add to that, because it's really, this algorithmic method that they use is really demonic. They can go on a driver-by-driver and passenger-by-passenger basis and decide how little that driver is willing to take for that ride and how much that passenger is willing to pay for that ride. Literally person by person. It's an exploitive system, that AI gives them the opportunity to do. We have in the taxi industry now, just in the last year, drivers have the ability to take Uber rides. Many of them hate it and refuse to do it and won't do it just on principle. And many of them are doing it. And they typically, if Uber is not surge pricing, they're typically at a much lower rate than a taxi fare. But drivers have found out that if you download, these systems are installed in the cab. So you get your Uber ride through your regular taxi, tablet that is both a communications device and a meter. But drivers have found out that if they download Uber onto their personal phone, the very same ride that is offered to them through the taxi equipment and through their personal phone will have a different price on it. And what they're finding is actually that the taxi ride Uber is at a lower price than the Uber that they would get on their personal phone. And that's probably because the taxi, in addition to Uber taking their cut, the taxi company itself is taking a cut of that. So these are the things that you know, they can do nowadays, and it's really exploitive. Yeah. Yes.
I have a question. What is the potential for getting an initiative like this on the ballot to give sense? Because a lot of people I know hate Waymo, you know, and they're very much opposed to the whole concept. They're worried by it. Even kids get worried when they see a driverless car. So, and then secondly, as part of that, is it a state responsibility, or is it something the city could do something about?
Yeah, the second part of the question kind of answers the first, because it, unfortunately for city purposes, Uber and Lyft and Waymo are regulated by the state, by the California Public Utilities Commission. And for that reason, the city doesn't have much of a handle on regulating these companies. They can tax them, and that's something else. But in terms of regulation, they can regulate what goes on the street.
In terms of Market Street closure.
Yeah, like, you know, they can say who can operate on Market Street, things like that. The airport has certain prerogatives that the city doesn't, but other than that, they are regulated by the state.
This technology, here's another example where if you had a cooperative using that technology, the workers would benefit from it instead of the companies. And that would be there are some cooperatives actually in other countries of workers where they run the system, taxi system. So the cooperative is run for the workers who actually do the driving. And that would be a very positive thing to happen. And the other thing is and this is again the question of the politics of it, is that as we all know, Uber and Lyft put this proposition on the ballot to eliminate protection of requiring workers' comp and the right of these workers to organize. And they promised that they would provide health care. But as we learned at that rally, a lot of drivers are not getting workers' comp or getting their health care. You only get the health care for the hours you actually are on the meter. And a small percentage of that is many times is paid passengers. So it's a highly exploitive position. The other thing is that the amount of money that these companies are making and that they're giving to the politicians is massive. If you look at the Democratic and Republican Party, they get tremendous amount of money, the politicians, from these companies. Harris, her, I think, brother-in-law worked for one of these tech companies as a lawyer, as a counsel. The Democratic Party is completely and thoroughly under the control of these companies that are making money from exploitation. In fact, Butler, who used to be the head of 2015 in California, SEIU 2015, and was appointed by Newsom to be senator, it turns out she was hyping for Uber in the ballot initiative. So here you have a union official, former union official, who's on the payroll of Uber, arguing for an initiative that's going to hurt workers, drivers, and she's appointed senator by the governor. So we have a problem, and this raised the question of the Labor Party needing a political party that would have a program for drivers. But the other thing is, as Marc was saying, they've deregulated and allowed the companies to determine themselves. In fact, one of the things that Musk did when he was in charge of Doge is to get rid of oversight, get rid of the people who were in charge of supervising the technology of autonomous vehicles. Why? Because he wants to bring in autonomous vehicles. And again, labor, the unions have to start fighting this and raising this. How can you allow the companies to be in charge of regulation? The fox is guarding the chickens, is what it is. Because these companies do not want regulation, and that's the program of Project 2025. Get rid of regulation and allow the corporations to run everything. That is what they're implementing in California and nationally. So this is a real problem for working people. And who pays? Like in the question of taxi drivers or Uber, Lyft drivers, when they get injured, if they don't have health care, they end up at public hospitals. So it's the taxpayer that's paying for it because they don't have private insurance. And raises the question again of public control of healthcare, because all workers should get healthcare, regardless of whether you're a worker or not worker, or a company has the healthcare or not. And that's why I'm supporting this national campaign for single payer. And we're going to be having a rally at Alcatraz Tours Pier 33 on July the 30th to raise the issue of, getting rid of single payer instead of spending money for prisons. But I would say, though, that the plan of the billionaires who run the United States is to get rid of all worker protection, get rid of all worker rights, and to basically have a slave society. That's what they're driving towards. And only the collective action of working people can stop it. Working people have the power. And we showed that in 1934 during the general strike here. And I think they're pushing for more collective action to deal with this, because it's a social crisis. It's not just a worker crisis, it's a social crisis in society. And we have to confront it. And I think that interviewing these drivers at Uber who marched and rallied, it's horrendous conditions. Drivers are working to keep paying for their cars in some instance. So it's a real dangerous situation, and it's a destruction of working people is what it is, and their families. There are many workers who are Uber or Lyft who sleep in their cars. And one of the drivers who participated in that action had a little box on top of her car because she has to live in her car. That is what's happening. And it's not happening because people aren't good people or people can't contribute to society. It's happening because these companies basically want everything. And that's what they're doing. The fact that these autonomous vehicles are being brought out in California are a threat. And the Department of Motor Vehicles, they don't follow the code, the vehicle code. Why is there an exception for these autonomous vehicles to violate the driving code that drivers have to place? The reason is that the DMV has been captured by these companies. That's why. They've been allowed to do that, and who allowed them to do that? Newsom and the Democratic politicians. Not just Newsom, the Democratic legislature allowed them to be exempted from following the DMV code.
So I kind of just wanted to ask the panel, and just in general, I know we talked about the drivers, because the drivers are very important in this equation, but as we mentioned before, the mayor, of course a Democrat, has allowed for Waymo to essentially take a part of a bus route on Market. So now on top, and Market Street is a huge transit hub, right? Streetcars, cable cars, buses, trains, things like that. And so this is obviously affecting more than just drivers and passengers, right? And the group of people I'm thinking about that I'm trying to figure out, I guess my question is, where do people think the public transit driver, the operator, specifically the bus drivers, right? Because they're the ones, trains don't have to worry about Waymos, right? The bus drivers, right? The streetcar drivers, the public transit workers, how can they fit into this equation of organizing against these big transit companies like Uber, Lyft, and so on and so forth?
I think it's directly in the interest of the transport workers to oppose things like Waymo on Market Street, because obviously it's going to create more congestion and more opportunities for accidents and incidents to take place. And if Waymo gets that opportunity, if Waymo actually gets to operate on Market Street, Uber and Lyft are going to be next. They're not going to sit on their hands and allow Waymo to take that space from them. So you're going to have a Market Street that is crowded with cars. We have fewer than 1,000 taxis in San Francisco. We have, I don't know how many tens of thousands of Ubers and Lyfts operating in the city. And, should they gain access to Market Street, it's all over on Market Street in terms of the advances that have been made. Market Street, since they imposed the restrictions on Market Street back in 2019, there's been an over 40% reduction in injury accidents, and there's been a 14% increase in the efficiency of Muni. And those are going to be gone if Market Street is turned back to this kind of traffic. So I think the unions, have a tremendous role to play if they're willing to play it, and I sure hope they will.
From my experience with this, just talking to bus drivers who get a ride from me, they're aware of this and they're kind of on our side. They do see it as the transit sector and that we all need to work together. So, and there is that energy also among other drivers. It's just not organized. So fortunately, there's like 110% of the willingness to get organized and, flex our muscle, do a full strike, People are interested in doing that, but they just don't know what day to do it, and we all got to actually start talking to each other to make that, flex that muscle.
Well, one of the things in this country that they've done as a result of private ownership is that they're destroying public transit. We can't even get a train in California from San Francisco to Los Angeles. And they have trains in Europe, in Japan, in China, in Korea, in Asia. Why can't we get trains? I mean, that's because the automobile industry and the capitalists don't want it. That's why. In California, the Uber and Lyft have hurt public transportation. I mean, you look at the Oakland airport, they built an extension and it's losing money because of the fact that drivers are doing the work. In San Francisco, mass transit is under attack. They're saying that as a result of the budget crisis, quote unquote budget crisis, they're going to have to cut back on BART, on all the public transit. And yet you have like 80 billionaires in San Francisco. When a new BART station opens, there's a massive increase in the value of the property around these stations. You would think you would tax that as a transit tax because the property value is going up. No. And there used to be a fight for a transit tax, so that big companies will pay for public transportation. We don't have that in San Francisco. So the companies benefit, but working people are suffering. They're cutting back bus lines in San Francisco. And I think that it's a destruction of public transportation. Again, the California legislature should make the billionaires pay. There's they have a super control of the legislature. 3/4 of the legislature are Democrats. They could pass legislation to tax the billionaires because it's an emergency situation. And what they're proposing, what Scott Wiener is proposing, is a tax on people again, not taxing the billionaires. Yeah, and I think that we have to say is that the billionaires should pay for public transportation, not working people. Working people are taxed more than enough. In fact, too much. I mean, and I think that, again, it's like the taxi cab drivers who are sleeping or Uber drivers sleeping in their cars. Why is that? Why do drivers come here from hundreds of miles away to San Francisco to work? They can't make a living where they are. So it's a system problem. It's not the taxi cab drivers. It's a system that's not providing living wages for workers in California, and it's going to get much worse. It is getting much worse, as I see it. I mean, the conditions of drivers are deteriorating rapidly, and these autonomous vehicles are going to further drive it down. That was what people were talking about at the rally that was held. Their conditions are deteriorating. Their conditions are under attack. And that's something that a Labor Party would talk about. The conditions of working people. Why are they getting worse when they should be getting better? The other point I want to make is the promise of AI, the promise of computers, was it would reduce the work week. You would have more time for your life. In reality, the work week is extended. People are working 2-3 jobs, they can't make it. So one of the things that I think a Labor Party would have is a reduction of the work week. 20 hours work or 30 hours work for 50 hours pay. That should be a benefit. I mean, making all this money from AI, from robotics, let workers have more time off. But that's not the program of the Democrats to reduce the work week, which I think is an important demand that this technology benefits people and society. A program to protect workers. Even bus drivers didn't have bathrooms to go to. They had to fight for that. I mean, bus drivers, having a place to relieve yourself, you'd think that would be a basic thing. There's a fight for that. So a Labor Party could have a program around protection of workers. I mean, they don't even want to have benches. Some groups are putting benches out because the They won't provide benches for people. I mean, this is a city with a lot of seniors. Think about that. They've got money, for other things, for this new park, privatized park that they have. Millions of dollars, but they don't even have money for benches for people at bus stops. And the other thing is these buses that come in San Francisco are unregulated. They have these private buses that are using public spaces in San Francisco. Again, it's a privatization of our public resources, and everything's for sale. That's one of the things that a Labor Party has to stand for, against privatization of public resources. This is a real life and death question for people in communities and cities and this country. I mean, the other thing is the program of Project 2025 is to privatize all public services, public education, public services. So what they're going to do is they want to privatize like the FAA, turn it over to private companies. I mean, that's the plan. And privatization of our public services is going to lead to disasters. They're not even funding like the FAA properly. The burnout of air traffic controllers, where their conditions are so bad that they're leaving. It's very dangerous flying in the United States. It's because of contracting out and wanting to get rid of workers. I mean, this is, for airlines, it's interesting. United, all these airlines are making billions of dollars, but there are not enough air traffic controllers? Why is that? Because they don't make these companies pay. That's why for that. And I think that, again, it revolves around the structure, economic structure that we have in this country. And that's why when you go to other countries, Canada, Europe, and other countries in Asia, Japan and Korea, the public structure is much better than we have in this country. I think we can say to people in this country, why is it other countries have a better structure than the United States? Why? Basic question. Why do they have national rail systems, public transportation for people? We can't do it in this country. We can't do it with the Democrats and Republicans because they're controlled by these same billionaire companies.
There was some mentioning of how people can help each other, and there was some mentioning of the Black Panther Party and things they had done in the past, and using some of those mutual aid techniques and so on, right? And there's a lot of talk about how both the Republicans and Democrats have failed us, but I'm not hearing from people about solutions that involve some of the existing parties. I particularly think that there are a lot of opportunities coming from the Green Party right now we should take advantage of, particularly because this June there's going to be a election for the governor of California, and we have a candidate who is running, and he is based on the ideals and things that worked in practice coming out of the Black Panther Party. I'm talking about Dr. Butch Ware, who is also an educator, by the way, because he is a professor at UC Santa Barbara. And I'd like to pass some flyers about that because one main push in his campaign is to highlight and promote the existing mutual aid activities that are already going on and encourage them. He says that to organize people, you don't just talk about what your platform is and say, vote for me. It's about challenging the whole system and helping people organize. Campaigns should not just be about getting someone elected, but should be about building the movement and enhancing the movement, whether you get elected or not. So I'm going to pass out some flyers about that.
How are you going to build a political alternative? That's the question you're asking. My view is build it by taking up the issues that people need to be addressed, like health care. There's a national single-payer campaign for health care. We've got to fight to get rid of the insurance industry in health care. And actually, what's going on now with health care is they're destroying health care. When they close Medicaid, they're taking off the Band-Aids. Medicaid is a Band-Aid on the healthcare system. The other thing that they've been doing is Medicare. They've been privatizing Medicare by turning it over to companies like United Healthcare. And that's the executive that was killed, Brian Thompson, by Luigi Mangione. The reason is The reason he was killed is that, you know, they're denying people their health care needs for profit, to make more money. So this is what's happening with the health care. I just had a friend who was in France for a conference I was at, and she broke her leg. She fell out in a shower, and she was on a train. She was getting worse, so they took her to a hospital near Naples. She was in the hospital for like 5 or 6 days, and it was time to go. No bill. Can you imagine that? She was in a hospital for 5 or 6 days for a broken leg and no bill? I mean, you know, like why can they do that in Italy, but here people are going bankrupt? I mean, that was another position for a Labor Party. Nobody goes bankrupt because of health care, because health care is public, and we're going to get rid of the insurance industry. That's another program for a Labor Party. So there are lots of programmatic issues that have to be raised. I think the action that's held on July 30th, National Day of Action for single payer, is an opportunity to say we need national health care. We need, instead of prisons, which is unbelievable the amount of money that they're spending on prisons, $130 billion for ICE. A lot of that is going to be contracted out to GeoCore and other prison industry companies. That's what they're investing in, for more profit for the prisons. I mean, it's a business. So I think, you know, again, there are a lot of issues that can be raised programmatically that say are going to help working people and benefit society and are not going to be taken up by the Democrats and Republicans. That's, I don't see the Democrats and Republicans, and that's their crisis, with any program to deal with the crisis. They're against the Republicans, but what's their program? What is their program? I think in San Francisco we see an example of where the tech billionaires have taken over the city, whether they're Republican or Democrat. They fund the Democratic Party. They help the redistricting to get rid of left supervisors. That was done by Breed and the billionaires. They fund that. They got rid of the district attorney. That was funded by the billionaires. And now the Democratic mayor, who's a billionaire, has put Sam Altman, who used to be a Democrat, in charge of digital development in San Francisco. They're digitizing. They want to get rid of public workers and privatize. So I think the program of the Democrats and Republicans is actually the similar. And I think but we don't have a mass political alternative, and the unions continue to support the Democrats, and that's a real problem. The LaborFest, it goes through July, but we should have meetings on the issue of like drivers and public, and bring the transport workers to it, to talk about this, to make it a public issue. That would be a good way of educating people. And also there have to be more meetings around AI.
So for those who don't know, my name is Robinson Nunez. I'm with DSA-SF, Democratic Social of America, specifically the labor working group. I work very closely with RDU, and Jason here is leading the effort on. But to kind of bring this conversation into action, I've been running these tech reading groups for a couple months now, and we're going to have one this Wednesday, the 23rd, at our office or on Zoom from 6 to 8 p.m. PST. We will be discussing the separation of the Google Books workers, the ones responsible for actually scanning the documents to get on Google Books, and kind of the challenges they face. They're not allowed to use like the same infrastructure that the Google techies use. They're disallowed from the buses and the bikes and everything, and they're getting to work at 4 a.m. and leaving at 6 p.m. and things like that. There'll be just general discussion as well as ways to get involved into actual organizing within the tech industry, whether that's with RDU or doing your own workplace organizing.